I thank IoT Academy for giving me an opportunity to talk about it with regards to science and technology. Now, firstly, what exactly is Indian knowledge system? As most of us are professors here, we all know that right now the Indian government, we all know that right now, yes, ma'am. We all know that right now the Indian government has introduced, UGC, as per the National Education Policy 2020, has made it mandatory that we introduce Indian knowledge systems in our curriculum. So most of us have done it from this academic year. And that's a different story, that to what extent we are able to institutionalize it in our curriculum, at least to 20%, slowly we can improve over it. So first of all, we have to know what exactly is this Indian knowledge system. So this refers to actually all of us subconsciously, we are following most of the practices what were followed in ancient India. Before entering into this, I would like to tell what exactly is Indian knowledge system. It refers to the vast and diverse body of traditional knowledge that is developed in India over the past. This Indian knowledge system is holistic. That means it focuses on the overall development of the student. Okay, not only in terms of academic, but also in terms of curricular and co-curricular activities. Then it is sustainable and it is deeply rooted in cultural and ecological contexts of India. For that reason, the government has made it mandatory that we introduce. I'm repeating this point because if any of us have not introduced this in our curriculum, it's good that we start introducing it phase-wise at least. Now, moving on to the first point, that is historical context. Now here, Indian knowledge system has evolved over thousands of years. You know, it has been shaped by India's diverse civilizations. We have n number of civilizations and philosophical traditions, and a lot of empirical pursuits. Keeping all this in content, no, we are having around 6 different periods of time where we can really understand how Indian knowledge system existed long back and how we are following the procedures and practices even till date. So firstly, if we go to the pre-Vedic and Indus Valley civilization, okay, that's somewhere around, these are the during Harappan civilization, something around before 1500 BC. There you could see the urban planning, the water management system, the agriculture, what kind of rainwater harvesting pit existed then also. We nowadays have followed it. The domestic area is also having a school building, is having a college building, is having, nowadays even corporate offices also are having a rainwater harvesting pit. But all these are derived from our ancient history. So all these existed. If you could see here in the Harappan civilization, to the right side, you could see there how the town building took place there, how it was planned. Definitely, we have improvised over it. That was a basic model. But then also there was a plan. Now, how we have a plan, then also there existed a plan. There existed, based on the Vastu Shastra only, then also buildings were constructed. But it was not known as Vastu Shastra. Nowadays, we are calling it as technical terms are given now. Rainwater harvesting this procedure is given now. This name of this particular procedure is given now, but it existed then also. We are only trying to follow it and improvise it. We are trying to sophisticate it and utilize it in our day-to-day habits, but it also existed then. So this was about pre-Vedic or Harappan civilization, where we learnt about urban planning and we learnt about water management. We learnt about organic farming, or we learned about sustainable agriculture, and we are following it till date. In between, we lost track, and once again, because of the climate change, we are again going back to our roots, and we are again following it. Then next, under this historical context only, as we had pre-Vedic and Harappan civilization, ancient innovations, there we also have Vedic period, which again originated from 1500 to 500 BC. Here, what happened? It is all about knowledge that is transmitted basically in Sanskrit language. All our ancient texts are written in Sanskrit language, and most of the students of this age don't know Sanskrit because we stopped taking Sanskrit as an elective subject. We started taking French or German or Spanish. In order to move abroad, our students started taking foreign languages. So we lost in touch with Sanskrit. But all the content in the ancient text is written in Sanskrit. Okay, so this Vedic period, which ranged around 1500 to 500 BC, there, all the knowledge which was written in the form of Vedas or Vedangas or early medical knowledge. You have Charak Samhita or all these were written in Sanskrit language. Even the astronomical observations, or let it come to the uh, charts. Okay, the charts, Vastu Shastra charts, or the texts. All these are already existing in our ancient books written in Sanskrit language. We, because we don't know the language, we didn't follow it, or because of the British rule, because of the colonial period, we lost in track of it. But once again, we are getting back to our ancient text. So that was in Vedic period. It so happened. Then we have, after Vedic period, we have classical period. So first we have pre-Vedic, or this Harappan civilization period. Then we have Vedic period. Then now next after that, preceding that, we have classical period. This started from around 500 BC to 1200 CE. And here you have all the innovations in mathematics, okay, like the decimal system, then introduction of zero, invention of zero, or algebra, geometry. All these came in this era, in classical period. Okay, so this concept of zero or the decimal system, advancement in algebra, I'll be talking about it in detail also. I'm just giving you a brief history about the historical content, how our Indian knowledge system has developed from pre-Vedic to Vedic period, then to classical period. In classical period, we had inventions in the field of mathematics. Then from there, not only invention in the field of mathematics, also in the field of astronomy and astrology. Okay, we under astronomy, we know about planetary motion, about solar eclipse and lunar eclipse. Now also in our social science textbook in the school, we are teaching about eclipses. It's all derived from our ancient text. Then we have about Charak Samhita, which is internal medicine, and Shushruta Samhita, which deals about surgery. Okay, so all the encyclopedias which relate to medicine still follow the principles and procedures that existed in Charak Samhita and Shushruta Samhita, but basically written in Sanskrit language. Apart from that, in that classical period, we also have um, um, developments in arts. The 64 Kala Shastras we had. Out of that, we have Natya Shastra, which is one of the Kala form, one of the forms of Kala Shastras. And then we have about temple architecture, the style in which the temple was built, it with the scientific reasoning. We're going to see that also in detail. Then about music, about sculpture. So all this happened in the classical period, which ranged from 500 BC to 1200 CE. And then from there, we moved on towards medieval period. Medieval period started from around 1200 to 1800 CE. Here now, basically, we have this bhakti movement coming in, wherein, bringing knowledge to the masses. Means whatever was written in the text, all this was made accessible to the mass. How it was made accessible to the mass? By, coming up with a system of gurukulas or pathshalas. Everything was orally transformed, oral traditions, wherein, a kind of preaching or instructing in the gurukulas or matas, all. And at that time the regional languages also started flourishing. Means we learned the text in all the ancient uh, content was written in Sanskrit, and from there any scholar who knows Sanskrit understood the content and then tried to translate it in their regional language. So this happened in the medieval period. So in how the knowledge was transformed from content, all right, the knowledge was transformed from the books to the local masses. So it was a kind of teaching started in through gurukulas, through pathshalas, or through mathas, and all these things started creeping up during the medieval period. Then we have the colonial period. Now in this colonial period, this is somewhere around 1800 to 1947. See there, you have this British education system cropping up. So British education system, they introduced Eurocentric curricula. Actually, that washed away our ancient traditions. This was a phase wherein we started losing in touch with our ancient tradition. because everything was so fancy and so whimsical, and sometimes we were forced to understand. It was all made mandatory. So we started diverting our path from the ancient text. But then also we have our scholars like Swami Vivekananda, Dayanand Saraswati, all these, they tried to reignite interest in ancient Indian texts, but they were successful only to a certain extent. Okay. So during this colonial period, we lost track of our ancient text. And then after that came our post-independence to the present day, till date. So it is thanks to our national education policy, NEP 2020, that we have started understanding our ancient text, where we lost track in the colonial period, and we started gaining access to our ancient text. So it was all revival through modern research in Ayurveda and Indian philosophy. So we got back to track, and here, with establishing Indian knowledge system division under the Ministry of Education, so that we promote interdisciplinary research. Now, whatever the latest discoveries that are done, all these root back to our ancient text. But we have lost access, to our ancient text, so that whichever country tries to invent it or tries to discover it, then we all see it as if it is something new. But if you root back, it is all dated in our ancient text. But because lack of the language to understand our ancient text, like we don't know Sanskrit, so we don't read those books. That is one reason. And because it is not mandatory, we don't read those ancient scriptures. So whatever new upcomings that are happening by the other countries, and they are patenting it, they are coming out with discoveries or inventions and patenting it. But all the credit should actually go back to India, because all these things were long time back documented in our ancient texts. It's only lack of our knowledge, because we are not providing this kind of information to our students. So it's thanks to National Education Policy 2020, which has made it mandatory that all our students, let it be school level or college level, we have to institutionalize Indian knowledge systems in our curriculum. So though if we may not be 100% successful in introducing at one phase, but phase by phase, subject by subject, definitely we can introduce it. And we can also bring in a change in the culture of the Indian society, where we are mostly trying to westernize ourselves, whereas the foreigners are trying to accept our Indian traditions. We are moving towards modernization. We're trying to follow the Western pattern of living. We can to an extent stop that by showing the traditions that we followed long back, which have scientific evidence. Okay, so we're going to see that. So now when we look into mathematical, so that was the time zone which I told you, historical context, where we have pre-Vedic, Vedic period, classical period, medieval period, colonial period, and post-independence. Post-independence is after 1947 till date. So whatever we are doing, with the latest being introducing IKS in the curriculum, both in school as well as in higher education curriculum. So in this way, we are trying to bring back our culture. Now, moving on to the next, we are having this advancement, classical era development, especially advancement in the field of maths, astronomy, astrology. So, India's contribution to mathematics is vast. Actually, we have done the major amount of inventions and discoveries. So it is very vast, original, and it is globally influential also. We are globally recognized for our inventions, and it is, the highlight point is that it is rooted in both abstract reasoning and practical application. This you will understand when we get to know about, so the concepts that were introduced was the concept of zero, decimal system, then some of the concepts advancements in algebra, trigonometry, calculus, most of the decimal system, and then permutations and combinations. All right. And so all these had influence on our logical thinking. All this was already texted long back in our ancient texts, but we try to understand it now. And we think that it is a discovery by some others, apart from the hard work of our ancient gurus, because we don't know, we never read our ancient texts. So we always give the credit to some foreigner. And but if you root back, we get to understand that this was always existing in our ancient history. Now, moving on to astronomy and astrology. First of all, we have to know what is the difference between astronomy and astrology. As far as I understand, that when it comes to astronomy, it is basically observational science. Okay, we observe it. We observe and come to a conclusion. Whereas, astrology is something predictive. We predict it based on, using charts or sometimes intuition. Okay, but when it comes to astronomy, it's observational, and here we use pakka instruments. We use telescope, right? So in astronomy is observational science where we are using instruments or we are using some mathematical calculations, to understand the celestial bodies. Whereas when it comes to astrology, it's a branch of science which is very predictive based on our intuition or based on the charts. And what are we using this for? We are using it to see how we are going to align our human life with cosmic rhythm. Okay, so suppose this Rashi, we are having 12 sun signs, right? And suppose this Rashi is in this zone of your chart, then how is it going to predict your future life? Okay, are you going to be happy, or is this time period good for you? Can you go for weddings, or is it a period for you wherein it won't be good and you will have to face some kind of unfair event in life? So this is all very intuitive, and it is all based on charts, based on all your 12 rashis, and what kind of practical procedures that you have to follow in order to align your destiny with dharma, something like that. That's all about astrology, which is always predictive. And astronomy is also known as Khagola Shastra. And herein we use instrument and basically used to understand the movement of these celestial bodies. Okay, how, because of the movement of the celestial bodies, how are they influencing our sun signs? So you're based on, in order to talk about astrology, I should also have some information of the movement of the play, position where a particular sun sign is positioned in the chart. So basically, that 9 square chart or 12 square chart is drawn, and there they see which planet is positioned in which chart. Based on that, my future is determined. Okay, Rasi Chakra. Um, so determining all the auspicious timings or aligning my destiny with my dharma, all these things come under astrology. So under to understand this astronomy and astrology, all the basics procedures were also again texted or documented in our text, but we didn't happen to read it. Now when we go back, all these were written in our Vedas. Especially Rig Veda has got a very strong depiction of astrology. In Rig Veda, you have got a lot of information regarding astrology. So right now, people do follow that. So it is not something new that no other country can take a credit of really contributing towards astronomy and astrology. How much India does? India has got a rich tradition. It's only our ignorance that we didn't happen to fall back or look back on our ancient text. Ma'am, next slide. Next one, ma'am. Okay. Now, when it comes to, all right, 20 minutes. All right. Now, next, when it comes to medicine and health. So, what we could say over here about medicine and health is that this also, once again, it existed long back in our ancient texts, but it's only that we get to know about it now. We are talking about it now in detail, mostly in the form of Ayurvedic medicine. Nowadays, also, you see people just go for allopathy. Okay, it's when we feel that we are not getting cured by allopathy, then we come back to Ayurveda. But some of the procedures which are followed in allopathy, that comes under Shushruta Samhita or Charaka Samhita, all these are nothing but your these are the basis for your modern science. Okay, we have what do you say, under Charaka Samhita, or first we will start with Shushruta Samhita. Actually, what do you mean by Charaka Samhita? It is internal medicine. We also call it as mm, Kaya Chikitsa. We call Charaka Samhita. It is a classical text, and we also call it as Kaya Chikitsa. And this is originally credited to Charaka, Acharya Charaka. He has come forward with this book, and this is somewhere written around second century, 2nd century CE. And this is also a text documented in Sanskrit language. This is basically internal medicine, which deals with your physiology, pathology, diagnosis, and therapeutics. Okay. And as far as I know, this Charaka Samhita, to the rarest of rare, it has got 120 chapters and divided into 6 sections. Then basically what you see, as I told you, it all deals about Charaka Samhita deals about internal medicine, wherein all your these three doshas, that is Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, balance of these three doshas. Okay, and then you have this Agni, that is your any digestive system related problems. And then it is also basically, it is all about preventive medicine, like how you can make lifestyle changes and diet. Now this is into demand nowadays, lifestyle, because we are all suffering with lifestyle diseases, like you have diabetes, obesity. All these are your lifestyle diseases, no? So disorders, in fact, not diseases, disorders. So all these things again dates back to Charaka Samhita, where everything is so clearly documented. Like nowadays we are employing a nutritionist, a dietitian, who will tell us what amount of food that we have to take in order to maintain a healthy life, and what kind of physical activities we have to do. But if you could see, out of those 120 chapters, which I have told under 8 sections, section number 6 and 7 is basically related to the work of a dietitian or a nutritionist of today's age. Whatever they are suggesting, all this is already documented long time back in our Charaka Samhita. Means, it's all about digestion, metabolism, immunity. All these things are in detail written in Charaka Samhita. Basically, what they tell us in Charaka Samhita is your imbalance of doshas, of these three doshas, imbalance of these doshas. And why do you have this imbalance of doshas? It's because of your improper diet, or your lifestyle changes, or your emotions, all this. So basically your physiology and pathology content comes under Charaka Samhita, even diagnosis to that reason, wherein, right now in modern medicine, we have what do you call interrogation, palpation, inspection. Basically, a science person can understand this. These are all the terms that we use under diagnostics. All this, if you could date back, then also we had interrogation. It was known as prashna, and palpation was called sparshana, and inspection was called darshana. So prashna, sparshana, and darshana. These are the concepts which are already written in our ancient texts, but it was our ignorance that we didn't make out. And now in the latest medical science books, this is written as interrogation, palpation, inspection. So we already have this. At the end of the day, what I would like to tell is that all things that we are following now, all the scientific procedures and techniques that we follow now, are dated long time back in our ancient text. So with the advent of NEP 2020, we are trying to inculcate IKS in our curriculum. That's the outcome. So we're just trying to relate that what existed before and what is its influence on today's science and technology. So whatever science and technology that we happen to see today roots back to the ancient texts. We have either followed the same, or we have modified and improvised it to our convenience. That is the only difference. But everything dates back. So actually, we can't give any credit to any foreign country for this, because everything, whatever a new invention or discovery, if you want to date back, and if you just Google it out and see, everything dates back to whatever the new patent any country tries to credit for. Everything, it dates back to Indian knowledge system. If you Google it and see, or you put it on your chat GPT, there is always a linked form. Always there is something that has creeped out of this ancient Indian text. And then when it comes to Charaka Samhita, we also, in Charaka Samhita, when I was going through while making this slide, what I got to know that right now we are having ethical clearance committee. If at all I have to do some um, research related to animals, then we have to constitute an ethical clearance committee, CPC SEA committee, which this minute detail was also registered or documented in our Charaka Samhita. That time also we did have medical ethics and duties of the doctor. Okay, so long time back also, no, we had all the roles and responsibilities or the ethical practices what a doctor should do. Definitely, it was not called as ethical guidelines. Might be it had another name or it had no heading at all. But we, even in our ancient time, we then also had ethics. Okay, so the physician should be well trained, he should be ethical, he should be empathetic, or he should be a keen observer. All these guidelines were written then also. Okay, and as such, it dealt with all these doshas, digestive issues, or fire, Agni, and all it dealt about all the six senses. Then it also dealt about the mind, how to keep the mind and soul um, aligned. All these concepts. Right now, we all take it under psychology, psychiatry. Modern terminology is given, but all these, if not sophisticated form, but in the primitive form, it still existed. So that's about Charaka Samhita. When you come to Shushruta Samhita, this all dealt about surgery. Shushruta Samhita is all about surgery. Charaka Samhita is all about internal medicine. In the same way, Shushruta Samhita is all about surgery. And here the credit goes to the pioneer in the field of this surgical procedures. It goes to Acharya Shushruta or Sage Shushruta. He is known as father of surgery. Now, if you could go to the next slide, I guess I have a, yeah. Yeah. So is Shushruta was known as father of surgery. So this is somewhere around 600 BC. And here also, once again, all these things are texted, or whatever I'm speaking now, whatever the latest modern concepts of surgery. We also had cosmetic surgery then. We also had liposuction then. Nowadays, we are giving it a term called liposuction. Okay, but long time back in Sanskrit, a different terminology was given to it, but it still existed. We have plastic surgery now. We see the celebrities going for n number of surgeries like rhinoplasty, correction of nose. The primitive form of plastic surgery was rhinoplasty, which was done during 600 BC. Okay, so here all, but everything was documented, not in English, but in Sanskrit. And Shushruta Samhita, if I'm not wrong, it is around 180 plus chapters, around 186 chapters, and it is basically all about surgery. Shalya Tantra, we call it as. Surgery in Sanskrit is called Shalya Tantra. So it's a contribution, to the ancient medical sciences, anatomy, and clinical practices, wherein tools were used then also. Now, might be the tools are very chiseled and very, target oriented with robotics coming right now. The tools are very chiseled, and we have point surgeries, but the concept of surgery was then also. So over the period of time, we have improvised over our medical procedures. We may not have robotic surgery then. Robotic surgery is for that accurate surgery. So we had the concept of surgery. Over the period of time, we have worked over it, we have improvised it, and it has become robotic surgery. But the concept of surgery or Shalya Tantra existed around 600 BC also. So in that Shushruta Samhita, you have around 300 different surgical procedures. If you could see how, then also, how did people learn? People learned on cadavers only, on dead bodies. So there was nothing called MBBS at that time. That time also, it was all exploring, just cutting open the dead body and exploring and trying to understand the physiology of the human body and trying to correct it. So around 300 surgeries are described in Shushruta Samhita, and different types of surgical instruments. Around there is a very vivid description of 125 surgical instruments. 125 different types of surgical instruments were used then, long time back, 600 BC. Okay, and the technique of incision and excision, cutting open, okay, and suturing, again concealing it, stitches. So suturing was there, then bone setting, like fracture setting. Okay, fracture setting was there, plastic surgery, as I told you, rhinoplasty, and then grafting, skin grafting. Okay, then mm, wound healing was very, very common. And then also they had this, when you cut open, definitely we have to see that the instruments have to be sterilized. So we didn't, there is no mention of the concept called sterilization in Shushruta Samhita, but the concept always existed. They didn't use the terminology sterilization, but the concept existed. So there was pre-operative and post-operative care existing in Shushruta Samhita also. Otherwise, definitely the patient would die out of infection. So they took real good care before the surgery and after surgery. Actually, more than the surgery, what we are always worried about, most of the um mishappenings are only because of the uh, unhygienic processes. Okay, basically, post-operative care is not taken properly in India. That is the basic reason where the person, even though the surgery was successful, post-operative, if the patient is not taken care with the surgical procedures, then the patient may develop infection and lose life, which could lead to inflammation and lose life. But then also we in the text, there are all evidences of sterilization, evidences of pre and post operative care. Okay, then so basically, how did they learn about all these? They learned about all these through cadavers only. Just started exploring. They got to know about the circulatory channels. What is a bone, what is a nerve, what is a tissue, what is a muscle, and all these things are described in detail in this Shushruta Samhita. And it's also about the here also you do have mention of some parts of Charaka Samhita, because surgery cannot be done without reading the physiology and anatomy of the body. So there's an overlap here. You also have some concepts of physiology and anatomy in this book. Then we also have pharmacology concepts here. So what is pharmacology? At that time, it was known as Dravya Guna. Right now also, in under Ayurvedic, people who have a trans knowledge of Ayurveda definitely know about Dravya Guna. Dravya Guna is nothing but the secondary metabolites which are derived from the plant or plant based medicines. If they are non-science students who are listening to the talk, it is all about um, plant-based medicines, or dietary recommendations, or the minerals which are necessary, all these things. I was just shocked when I was just going through the literature, where now we get to know that the essence of magnesium, especially in the women who's above 45, the medical council is suggesting that magnesium plays a very, very important role. Apart from potassium and calcium, magnesium is a root cause for the mood swings or the menopause in women. And but all these things is still dated in our ancient texts. So when I was just surfing the literature, I could also find that there is a mention of minerals in the ancient texts, like in Shushruta Samhita also. And here, no, apart from pharmacology, that is, apart from the plant-based medicine, wherein we are taking the secondary metabolites either from the leaf or the root or the bark, and trying to use that, purify, isolate, and then crystallize a component, that secondary metabolite, and try to use it on the wounded part of the body, and it tries to heal. So that's pharmacology. When we are using a plant-based medicine on a human body, or on a rat body for experimental purpose. So all these evidences are there in our ancient text. Apart from that, we also have um, concepts on burns, poisons, psychiatry. Psychiatry is also there. Toxicology is also there, which is called Vishachikta. Okay, that means snake bites, scorpion bites, and poisoning, metal poisoning also. Metal poisoning came into existence only after industrialization. We thought only after industrial revolution, because for the modernization, all the natural habitat was washed away, and we started constructing buildings and industries, and then only came up this concept of metal poisoning. But there is an evidence of metal poisoning, and not only metal poisoning but also food poisoning and animal bites in um, Shushruta Samhita, and also about psychiatry, mental health, and behavioral disorders. All this is also there in Ayurveda. It is also there in Shushruta Samhita. So, what I conclude to say here, that right from um, basic physiology till surgery, what we follow till date, all these procedures, nowhere they are told that it is wrong, or this kind of surgery or this kind of practice can be harmful to the human body. Nowhere it is recorded like that. Even in the modern text, you don't find any literature which says that the concept that was followed in the ancient period is wrong and it is no longer used. Nothing of that sort, but always there is an improvisation of the concepts that were practiced in the ancient period. So let it come to surgery, let it come to in the field of cosmetics or general surgery, or in terms of public health, which relates to hygiene, dietetics, or else anatomy also, or even relating to medical ethics. All this have been documented in our ancient texts like Charaka Samhita, Ayurveda, or Shushruta Samhita. All these concepts existed, and we are only improvising. We are either practicing the same concept, or we have improvised it and tailor made it in such a way that it creates it gets good results, and it creates convenience to the person who is operating. Okay, next one, ma'am. Okay, next, coming to technology and engineering, will you please go to the next slide, ma'am? Okay, when it comes to metallurgy, so in the field of metallurgy, we've wood steel. Now, wood steel, now the moment right now, whoever is teaching nanotechnology, the professors who are teaching nanotechnology, you could understand this is the most classic example that we take and we talk about wood steel. Now, what exactly you mean by this wood steel? It is actually it is what I mean to say is that it is a basic example that we use when we are talking about nanotechnology. Okay, that means at the um, um, generally the swords. Okay, it is the sword which we use during fighting, during war. The Damascus sword, that is made up of wood steel. The Damascus sword that we use during war is made up of wood steel. So what exactly is this wood steel? It is a very remarkable contribution of metallurgical science, which is having the very good strength, sharpness, and flexibility. Okay, so this is written in our ancient text. But right now, when we're teaching the concept of nanotechnology, because the edge of the Damascus sword is made up of wood steel, and that sharpness or that strength of that particular wood steel is because of the nanoparticles. So the concept of nanoparticles existed then also, but we didn't know that it was nanoparticles. Right now, a scientific name, a scientific terminology is given saying that it is all about nanoparticles. Whenever we are teaching about nanoparticles, we talk about wood steel as a classic example. What is the speciality of this wood steel is that, it is quite sharp. It can also just cut hair into two equal parts. That is the best example or the best evidence of its remarkable contribution that I can give you is that it's quite sharp, that it can also cut hair into equal parts. And basically, it is used in uh, formation of Damascus sword. It is actually an alloy. Scientifically speaking, it is a high carbon steel alloy which is heated under high temperatures, and it is a marvel of metallurgy. It is something, normally cutting hair, which is of such a small dimension, is very difficult. But that was possible because of the nanoparticles. 10 raised to minus 12 dimension size nanoparticles were coated on the edge of the Damascus sword. Damascus is the name of a sword which is used in war, and the edge of the sword was coated with this nanoparticles of wood steel. Right now, we are giving example of this wood steel in the field of nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is a concept which is developed over the period of time, but the basics already existed in our ancient texts. That's about wood steel. Then coming to iron pillar of Delhi, we are all aware of it that it is rust proof. It is soaking in rain or in sunlight, and then also the pillar is not, though it is exposed to different climatic conditions, it is not getting rusted. So it is also again a marvel of ancient Indian metallurgy. You have this iron pillar of Delhi in Qutub Minar complex in Delhi. What they mean to say that it is rust free, corrosion resistant, and it is around um, 1600, somewhere around 4th century CE, during Gupta period. During Gupta period, it was constructed, and it is made up of iron, around 6,000 kgs of iron, wrought iron. Wrought iron means what? WROUGHT. Wrought iron means what? It has very low content of carbon in it. So what makes it so special? How is it um, corrosion resistant? Though it is outside, exposed to sun and rain, it is rust proof or corrosion resistant. What could be the reason? The reason is that, scientific reason is that it is high in phosphorus content. The phosphorus content in the iron is high, and there is a passive film. There is an hydrogen phosphate hydrate film coated on it, which doesn't allow uh, water or sunlight to enter and rust it. And right now the iron pillars are having iron, anything rich in iron is having more amount of sulfur and manganese. So at that time there was no sulfur and manganese in this iron content. The wrought iron that they have used, it had high content of phosphorus, and it was devoid or absence of sulfur and manganese. So that was the reason. So that time the engineers, they had this in their mind, and they made an iron pillar. Um, at that time, somewhere around 1600 years ago, they made it. So this science existed in them also. So they also had this mind of creating an iron pillar which was devoid of sulfur and manganese. So that this knowledge was there in them also. And so right now, if you are having rust proof iron, that it's nothing to feel surprised, because it already existed in our ancient Indian tradition. We just didn't know. It could be some other country comes out with an iron resistant, corrosion resistant iron, and they could take a patent on it. And it also happened of late. But if you date back to our history, that's the reason we are inculcating it. We are trying to inculcate in school education and higher education, so that our students are aware of the inventions and discoveries in the recent Indian history, in our ancient text. When they are aware of all these things, whatever inventions and discoveries that they make in the near future, it all goes to India, because it is a hard work of ancient Indians, so that the credit also goes back to India instead of giving it in the foreign hands. That is the only. So these are the just two examples that I have taken of Indian metallurgy. Ma'am, next slide. Okay, now something else about dyeing techniques. Right now also we have dyeing techniques. This also existed in our in our ancient past. What people used to do, natural dyeing process, it originated in Orissa. In India, it originated in Orissa, and it came from natural dyes. Okay, natural dyes, mostly from turmeric and from the petals of the flowers, any colored component, flowers or green leaves, anything that which is colored, we try to extract. We try to extract the chromophore from it, the colored component from it, isolate it, and try to use it as a dye. So right now this is a very common concept, but the credit goes to in the ancient Indian text. So it is very common for us today, but it existed long time back also. So people used to take color from some of the spices, okay, and apart from, next slide ma'am, and even from flowers, any colored component, okay. That is one about dyeing system. Then also, we had these bandhani prints. Tie and dye process existed even in ancient India. I couldn't put those slides here, but as far as I know, that even in ancient India we had these bandhani prints. The tie and dye method was existing. So whatever we are doing, the tie and dye method now, it dates back to our ancient tradition. Perfumery is one more thing. This goes to they here also, no, we are these barrels, ittarkhana, ittardan or ittarkhana, wherein you see how the perfumery developed, and it came into vogue in the Mughal period. Okay. Later on, with colonization, the trade got stopped, and most of our perfumes were transported to France. Right now, France is the capital of perfumes, but it again roots back to our ancient Indian tradition, where the concept of how to isolate and then process the smelling agents. So here also the smelling agents were taken from plants, from flowers, plants, spices. Okay, initially from flowers, plants, parts of plants, that is flowers, and from spices. And during the Mughal era, the trade was in demand, but later on it started declining, and the major consumer of our perfumery was France. And right now, in today's world, when you account for perfumes, France, Paris, France take the topmost credit. But the basic science is rooted in ancient Indian text. Okay, so you could see how the barrels are and how the perfumery, how it was extracted. This is the picture on the right side is basically about the processing of the perfume, how we have extracted the perfume, and that in those barrels, no, it is to evaporate the substance which is volatile just goes away as the fumes, and the crude content is, again, now we are having distillation, distillators we have. That time there was no fractional distillation. In these pots only, the secondary metabolites were put and heated, where distillation took place. Right now we are having fractional distillations. Perfumes are prepared through fractional distillation, but long time back it was through these pots. Next one, ma'am. Okay. So that came. So Mera Bharat, a land of rich traditions and culture. If there are any doubts, you could ask me, or else, these are very few concepts in science and technology which I have brought forward. But to name, there are n number of such concepts, and sometimes we get surprised by seeing that, okay, this credit is also of India. This whatever comes right now as a invention of some other country, actually it is rooted back all to India. Somewhere or the other, there is an evidence of it in the history in our ancient text. You're welcome with your doubts, if any.